Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to create some textured birthday balloons, plus I'm going to share the unboxing of the Simon Says Stamp April 2022 card kit. I am using 7 products from the kit today, so this is a very kit heavy set of cards. So here is the box. I am going to open it quickly. You're getting Stickles glitter gels in Venus and Galaxy. These are absolutely gorgeous. And then let's pull out the rest of the kit here. There's a little sucker in here, and then we are going to be getting the new Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink, these wonderful balloon dies, 2 sets of Yupo paper, the stars embossing folder. We're getting a whole bunch, 18 sheets of the American Crafts Damask Love 6x8 paper, a new stamp set called Life is a Party, and a sheet of Neenah 110-pound cardstock. For my cards today, we're going to be using the stamp set, the balloon dies, the Damask Love double-sided or single-sided paper, the Venus Stickles glitter gel, that's a mouthful, and the Galaxy Stickles glitter gel. I don't know why I have a hard time saying Stickles. As well as the Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink and the Solar White cardstock. So I actually put the Stickles on some white cardstock just to kind of see how it looked, and I like it, but a lot of white shows through, so I actually decided to go ahead and take the Saltwater Taffy Distress Oxide ink up a half sheet of 8.5 by 11 Neenah 110-pound weight cardstock, and then we're going to apply the Stickles right over the top of this and let it dry. Now I do want to let you know that I used a pretty heavy application of the Stickles, and it does say that you can heat dry it with a heat tool, a heat gun, and I did, but I still think it takes a while to dry, so I kind of would intermittently try heat drying it and then let it air dry. I think ultimately air drying is probably the best because the heat, adding a heat really warped my cardstock, which you'll see here in a little bit. But I would probably give it a good, I want to say 2 or 3 hours of dry time. I think I probably let it dry for that long. Probably not quite that long since I did use the heat tool, but I think it would be dry by then. But look at the glitter in it, you guys. This is gorgeous. I want it in every color. I didn't even know this was a thing till it came in the kit. I want this in every color. It has huge chunks of glitter in it. It's amazing. I opted to go ahead and apply it to my cardstock first, and then once completely dry, I'm going to die cut it. You could also apply it to a die cut if you wanted to, but look how pretty this is. The teal color is called Galaxy, and the pink color is called Venus, and I absolutely love them. I'm so excited that you get both in the kit. Then from one sheet of 6x8 Damask Love paper, we are going to die cut 2 rectangles using a Simon Says Stamp Basic Rectangles die. I love that you can get a couple of backgrounds, even if you're using your paper trimmer, from one sheet. I picked the striped sheet for my cards here today. I'll be using other pattern papers from this kit for another video a little later this month on the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. So here are my 2 backgrounds. I have picked some sentiment stamps from the Life is a Party 6x8 stamp set included in the kit. We're going to be using the Today sentiment with some sentiment strips as well as another small greeting. And the 2 largest balloon dies that you get in the kit, remember you do get the set of 3. I'm going to kind of play around with placement and see what I like, and then we will go ahead and start stamping these images onto the background. Now, I did decide to center it. I thought I would kind of shift it over to the right, but ultimately I decided to just line it up straight, kind of in the middle, I guess, along the bottom edge of the design. So we're going to be placing the Today sentiment right there, and I'm going to stamp that on both backgrounds first. I'm going to use an embossing ink from Hero Arts to stamp the Today and heat emboss with white embossing powder. We will do this assembly line style. You could even pick some of the other pattern papers from the kit or solid cardstock and do something similar if you wanted to. I'm using the Misty to stamp this, and I'll stamp it a couple times and heat emboss. Then I'm going to stamp 2 different phrases from the same Life is a Party stamp set using VersaFine ONYX black ink on a scrap of white cardstock. I love that these look like little labels, and I'm going to use my favorite sentiment labels die to die cut these into sentiment strips that we can use on our card. If you don't want to use different sentiments, you could stamp the same one as many times as you need. I don't know about you guys, but I love having multiple birthday cards on hand to send out when I need them rather than having to make them right then and there. I'm always making a ton of birthday cards. I do send out birthday cards to all of my Patreon members during their birthday month, so birthday cards are always a great thing to have on hand, and this kit is amazing for all of the birthday cards. I'm going to move my Misty out of the way. You can see I've lined up that sentiment labels die, and I'm going to grab my Spellbinders Platinum here, and we are going to run this through. Let me trim down that cardstock a little bit. I like to run these sentiment labels through vertically. And then I'm going to pop that out. I'm going to flip the sentiment strip and line it up with the other side. You can use a paper trimmer if you'd like, or your scissors. I always like using the sentiment labels dies. They're my favorite to give a really finished look. And we're going to cut the other end of the sentiment label. That looks so cute. Let's go ahead and do the other one. And then we're going to stamp and emboss the rest of our greetings on our pattern paper backgrounds. I'm a huge fan of creating multiple cards at one time when you have all the supplies out. If you're going to make the mess, go ahead and make a whole bunch, and then you have them ready to go. After we have our 2 sentiment strips, I'm going to take my Misty and we are going to stamp the Today in here. I know I lined it up a minute ago. I hadn't quite stamped it yet. I like to use the Misty when I'm using a sentiment that has a lot of surface area like this Today. I want to make sure that I get a really good impression on my paper. And so I use the Misty so I can stamp it a couple of times. We're adding white embossing powder, and then we will heat set this with our heat tool. And I love how the white looks against this bright stripe background. I mean, how pretty is this stripe background? I love to create my own with cardstock strips, but this made out of pattern paper is even easier, which is amazing. I pulled so many of the pattern papers from this April card kit out to use for different cards because I absolutely love the papers. This Damask Love paper in the kit is amazing. After we have our sentiments stamped, there's also another sentiment in the stamp set called Party. I want to mention that really quick. So you could definitely mix up and use some different sentiments if you wanted to, like Life is a Party or Time for a Party. And then you could kind of mix and match different sentiments with that. If you want this a similar look with that font. And then I'm going to clean the stamp, and we are going to stamp the little phrase right here next to it that says it's your birthday. And I want to line that up right above the latter part of the word today, kind of just to the right of the letter D. And then we're going to sprinkle on white embossing powder and heat emboss that. So there was a lot I could do while I waited for the stickles to dry. I always try to do anything that requires a lot of dry time early. This wasn't enough to take that much time, so I actually went and did a whole bunch of other things and then came back. But I did do all of the rest of the prep work for my cards and put everything together, and then came back and die cut the balloons and added them to my card last. Using the balloons as a guide, I'm going to take 2 of the balloon strings from the Life is a Party stamp set, and I'm going to line them up on my card. I'm using a piece of Post-it tape to mask off the sentiments so that I don't accidentally stamp over them with the balloon strings. And then I'm going to stamp these with clear embossing ink and heat emboss with white embossing powder. So I can move the balloon dies out of the way now. I'm going to prep my cardstock with a powder tool, stamp my balloon strings here, and then sprinkle on the embossing powder. I left the Post-it tape in place. I removed it first, but some of the adhesive on the back of the Post-it tape can cause some of the embossing powder to stick to it, so I found it best to kind of go ahead and leave it in place. I'm just using a dry paintbrush to remove any little stray flakes or powder there on my background, and then I'm going to use the same piece of Post-it tape to mask off the second background and do the same thing. So I'll prep it with a powder tool, ink up the balloon strings with clear embossing ink. We're going to stamp those on our background, sprinkle on our white embossing powder, and then we will simply heat set these. I notice I missed a little area that I'm just going to restamp. I think I'll just restamp all of it. Add another layer of embossing powder and heat set. I always like to make sure it's stamped correctly before I take those images out of my MISTI and put them away. So I'm going to take my dry paintbrush, remove any stray little embossing powder flakes, heat set that. There is a little smudge there where some of the embossing powder stuck, so I'm taking this Couture Creations little tool and basically removing the embossing powder from my card. It is fantastic. It's a little battery operated tool that can kind of help remove some of those little smudges or unwanted areas. In this case, that embossing powder that wasn't where I wanted it. After we have that, we're going to put some foam adhesive on the back of our sentiment labels that we die cut a minute ago, and we are going to pop these in place right underneath the word today. I like the contrast of the black on these sentiment strips. And so one of them is today is going to be a good day. And the other card is today is all about you. Both of them are great birthday kind of greetings. They could also be for other kinds of occasions as well. So I'm going to check and see if my Stickles is dry. Not quite yet. I'm going to go ahead and pop these backgrounds in place. I used one of the basic rectangles from Simon Says Stamp that is slightly smaller than A2 sized, which leaves me with a nice white border all the way around. I'm using some Simon Says Stamp top fold note cards here. These are pre-cut and scored cards. I love them. I use them all of the time for all of my card making when I'm using a white card base. And now we are ready to run our balloons, our Stickles backgrounds and balloons through our die cutting machine. So you can see that my background curled up really badly because I heated it up with my heat tool. I don't know that it would have done that if I had just left it alone, but we're going to make it work. I'm going to tape down my balloons and run them through to get 2 pink balloons, one big and one medium. I did not use the small size here today. Then we are going to flip it around and we're going to cut one big and one medium from the blue or teal background. I ended up running it through one at a time because they kept overlapping and moving and I did not want that to happen. So let's just pull it out. It did not want to participate the way I wanted it to. And there is one of our balloons. I will die cut the balloons again from white cardstock so that I can have that little highlight that goes on the balloon, and I'm going to inlay that into the design on my card. Now that we have our balloons, we're ready to put it all together. I am going to go ahead and place some nice strong adhesive on the back of the balloons and adhere them directly to the card base. The large balloon will hang slightly off the top of the card background. I'm using a combination of tape runner and liquid adhesive, just kind of depending, I guess. I really think the liquid adhesive is going to work great because it'll kind of lay flat. But here is what I did. I actually placed some acrylic blocks on the top of both cards and left it there for maybe an hour or so, which really helped flatten out the balloons. Since that cardstock rolled up a little bit, I was afraid it wasn't going to want to stay laying flat on my cards. So I placed acrylic blocks on top and that helped hold it nice and flat. So here in a minute, once these are dry, I am going to show you a close-up look of the finished cards with these balloons. But I love all the sparkle and shine. Like I said, these Stickles are amazing. They work through stencils, so if you could use these on some of your favorite stencils and things, you can use them like I did here and create your own glitter type cardstock, which is so pretty. And I think it looks amazing against that striped background. Just inlaid the little highlights there. Once dry, I am going to snip off anything hanging off the edge of the card so it fits in an envelope nicely. And it's looking like it's going to be nice and flat right now. And then I will show you a close-up of both of the finished cards. Look at all that sparkle and shine. Isn't that fun? Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 2 birthday cards featuring the Simon Says Stamp April 2022 card kit called Life is a Party. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description down below. We would love to have you over there. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Here is another video featuring Simon Says Stamp products that you might be interested in. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.